Alright. Um, hello everyone. I said I'd try getting another video up at some point to make use of the channel, and here I am again. So here I am. What I thought I'd try doing today is I tried to do an art piece, as you might be able to tell. What I'm doing is I'm going to be using some chalk that I got from a friend for Christmas, and I'm going to be using it on some black construction paper. I haven't really used chalk that much outside of using it on a board, and in fact that was part of kind of why I was glad to get some chalk was besides being able to have a possibility for putting up my blackboard again, now I have something I can try to use with on some art. I mean, for the most part, I've just used pastels for use on colored backgrounds like this for paper. I did try to see what it would be like a little bit at first to make sure I could do this well, and it works. And why not? It's a dry medium like many others. It's just not explicitly made for a paper like some mediums are, but it works. You can scratch it and rub it and all that, kind of like how you would with a regular pastel. So like I did some drawing, and you can see some spots where I tried to do some stretching and blurring from either just using like either a little bit of a paper towel, or using, like for this mark in particular, I used a kneadable eraser. So when it comes to making something today, I wasn't entirely sure what I want to do, but one thing I thought I would decide to do is try to do a drawing of like a magical creature of some kind. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start with that, and I think I'll start it first by I think I'm going to try to do a little bit of kind of getting a nice large swath of chalk spread across here. I've done this from time to time using charcoal, and I like being able to do it because you might wonder, why am I filling up the entire page? That would ruin whatever I might have in mind. Well, that's not true exactly. You see, by one of the things people don't often realize about using dry media is that it isn't just simply a matter of, putting on your medium of choice and just adding and adding and adding. One of the best things you can do in art is also learn how to be subtractive. And I kind of demonstrated some ways right there of what you can do. You can wipe it down to kind of, besides take away some excess. I'm not sure if the camera's showing this, but it's also leaving behind a little bit of a residue, which is lightly coloring the paper. And it can be neat to have, a little bit of a little bit of a color in the background there. And besides that, one of the elements of doing a subtractive thing is that you can also use an eraser to make a mark. And since there are particles of chalk here, I can move my eraser. I'm just kind of trying to brush off excess particles there. And when I press on that and leave the eraser marks there, you can kind of see it leaves a dark mark. And you don't need a kneadable eraser for that. You can also use a regular old eraser. I mean, this is a big one, but it's your basic pink eraser you can find just about anywhere. I'm kind of just lightly brushing this here with the paper towel. And in fact, the regular eraser is kind of good in a way because you can grip it nice and hard and you can make your mark in that way. Now, I haven't really quite made these marks with the idea of trying to do that creature, but I figure I can make it work anyway. You see, what I had in mind was I was doing something. I had done a bit of a I have designed this sort of creature before. It was made with a very specific sort of idea in mind. It was originally made for an idea for a fantasy story, kind of a role-playing thing, where the idea was I was going to be taking on the role of sort of an aquatic race, and I was going to be basically kind of playing sort of a shaman that would communicate with spirits, and could do magic through. Primarily, his role was going to be through dances. The idea was that in the process of communicating through spirits, you'd have kind of a totem. And while I never really had gotten to the point of making the creature for official in the process of trying to make the character, and unfortunately it was something that never really panned out, I had a lot of fun sketching the creature. And so what I did was I had kind of expanded it and made it a bit more purposeful, and even if I don't end up using it quite as I intended, I'm glad I had the chance to work on something like that because it gave me a chance to exercise my creativity. Now, this creature that I had in mind would be one of the spirits that this shaman character would communicate with. And the idea was that the shaman character was part of this race of aquatic beings that would live under the water. And so this creature that was a spirit he could communicate with was sort of a strange spirit being which kind of looks like a chimera of... It looks like a four-legged land animal, kind of like... maybe something like a canine, like a fox or a wolf, but it had a lot of features of an aquatic animal. And so the idea was, to kind of produce this bizarre-looking thing that, it was fantastic and everything, but it has these interesting chimeric features. Or at least I consider them to be interesting. So, in the process of trying to make this sort of creature, what I did was I kind of gave it some... I made it kind of look like it had elements of a squid. So, hopefully you can kind of see what I'm going with here, but what I have so far is you can kind of see how some of this might work with a land animal where... I've got the main body here, I've got tails going out through here, there's hind legs showing through here, there's forelegs here, there's a head that's looking off to the right. The idea is that we kind of have it in profile with, slight 3/4 view. And so what we have here is, you might notice I'm adding some little extras on, because like I mentioned, I tried to give it some sort of squid-like attributes where one of the things I'm going to be doing here is there's 2 tails here, and 2 sort of tentacles that come out from the back, and 2 prominent sort of ear shapes that come out from the head. And so the idea is that while there's there's the 4 legs that are like on the land animal, there's like these 6 protrusions that are kind of like the tentacles that would be coming from a squid. So I'm going to try to make this creature more defined than what I have so far. And you might be wondering how exactly I have this background tying in that I drew. Well, part of the idea that I had with this creature was the idea that it was a creature that had something to do with the water. And what I decided in the course of making it and trying to think of a mythos for it was that it was something that was tied to the idea of the tides. And so I had kind of the wavy pattern in the background, which I figured might help a little bit with the water motif. But besides that, there's also this kind of a circle here. You might wonder what that is, and the idea is that that's supposed to be a moon. Now, you might wonder what a moon would have to do with the water and the tides. Well, one thing that I know that while I'm not a very, I am not exactly a scientist, but I do remember a few facts from the course of learning in my general education. And that is that the moon is something which is responsible for the tides. What happens is that the moon, in the process of orbiting around the Earth, has a gravitational pull which tugs at the water, and the water kind of follows the orbit of the moon. And as it does so, there's these areas of the water where it rises a bit higher than what you'd see on the shore, and then there will be the lower places that come back down, which is why there are the tides that seem to go in and out. And so that's kind of why I figured a creature like that, it would be important to have it be given a moon motif. And that was when I was trying to make a visual design for the character. One of the things that I did with him was, as a shaman, I would design an outfit for him that would have aspects that would look important, like some iconography. And one of the things that I designed on him was patterns sewn on, which appeared to show the moon in its phases. And so that's part of why the idea is that it would be important. And because when I was making the character, I mentioned it being an aquatic race, but it wasn't entirely aquatic because it was also, they were sort of amphibious. While they could breathe underwater and cool stuff like that, they also lived on land. They had legs. They kind of had a long tail that they could use to help aid in swimming. But since they were a people who not only lived by the water but also lived by the land, the tide would be very important, because the tide is probably one of the most prominent, I figure would be one of the most prominent aspects of living close between the land and the water. And so that's part of why I decided it was kind of an important aspect for the character. And by extension, could be an important thing in the beliefs of the characters, of the character's race.